Hello, it's Peter Cowley here again. Welcome. So at the end of the last vlog that I did, we'd got to the point where I was booked in for an MRI on the following Friday. This is a week or so before Christmas. I had the MRI in the afternoon. Of those who haven't had an MRI before, it's not a particularly pleasant experience. It's inside a tunnel. There's a lot of noise because of the way that the supercooled magnets are all switching on and off. And anyway, I coped with that, came out again. And the last time I had an MRI, which was to do with an issue which they thought was some plaque in an artery in my throat, which would actually, in my neck, it wasn't the case. I'd been immediately given a disc, a DVD with the image on. So I asked after this for my disc, and the answer was slightly strange. One of the radiographers said, "Sorry, the machine's broken." The other said, "We haven't got any discs anyway." So I thought, that's strange. They obviously don't want to tell me something. But still, in a naive way, I still basically ignored, not ignored, but I just went home. Elise was there at home. Anyway, the neurologist rang me about 7 o'clock that evening to tell me that they had found some tumours in my brain. He said that it was unlikely that it was brain cancer, that it was more likely there was going to be another cancer which had spread into the brain, although at that point he still, of course, couldn't determine that it was definitely cancer, that it could potentially have been benign. People do have benign tumours in their brains. So then the next stage is to get a CT scan. Sorry, I'm just going to check my notes here. The first thing, sorry, on that time there, he wanted me to go onto steroids, not anabolic steroids, but cortisol steroids, because that will reduce the swelling, the edema sac around the tumour, and that should improve my balance. So I went on to a pretty high dose of steroids the following day or over the weekend when I got hold of them, and then went to see him again on the Tuesday so that he could put me through into the into the NHS system, so I could have a CT scan. So I then went to have some bloods and then had a CT scan. So we're talking about 2 days before Christmas now. So this is the 23rd of December 2021. So I have the CT scan. The CT scan is, for those who don't know, is effectively a fairly low dose radioactive. It's again in a tunnel. The X-ray goes round you, takes slices of you. The slices are much wider or bigger than they are with an MRI scan. So the resolution's not as good, but it can see, and it went from the neck down to my genitals. And so then that evening, the consultant who was on duty, oncologist, gave me a ring and told me that they had found a shadow, or what they assumed was a tumour, in one of my lungs, and in my right lung, and they had found others on my kidney, which he didn't think, on my liver, which he didn't think was, we thought it was benign. I think he was wrong there, but this was very early, that was his initial scan. So then the following week, I went into, in fact, Christmas is then in the way, so I've got a preliminary diagnosis on Thursday the 23rd, it's Christmas on the 25th. And the next appointment isn't until the 30th, which is the Thursday after Christmas. Christmas is a bit strange, as you can possibly imagine, or can imagine, I'm sure you can imagine. So much unknown. So, they were obviously, I had cancer. They thought at that point it was lung cancer. They weren't sure, and it had metastasized. The only symptom I had was balance, and that was gradually improving because of the high dose of steroids I had at the time. So I had a very strange Christmas. One of my children came back Christmas Day from France. I hadn't mentioned that. We only told the children so my children, Alan and Matt, while they were away. They were both away. One was in Mallorca and one was skiing about a week or so beforehand, but still we don't know at this point. So we moved then on to the going to see the respiratory consultant, which was on the 30th of December, and he showed on the screen the various, the scan, the MRI and the CT scan, and showed where the tumours were. So the tumour, there were 3 tumours, the biggest of which at that time was 17 millimetres, though it grew before the drug we'll come on to later, my targeted therapy worked, it grew to 27 millimetres, so it was growing very, very rapidly at that point. The steroids was reducing the swelling, so my balance improved a bit, but I really didn't know what. I didn't know what therapy, chemo or anything, so it was a really, really frightening time at that point. I decided that, I didn't know, but I thought I would end up with some sort of infusion-based chemotherapy, which of course means that, as you might have met people who've been this on before, heard about it, you have possibly a week of feeling okay and a week feeling pretty bad after the chemo is infused into your body, and I assumed that was going to happen, so I assumed that would start as soon as they could. So I just thought I'd go and spend some time with friends, and I didn't. I spent a lot of time working on my will and the financial affairs and everything, just to get things in order. That was a really, really tough time for everybody around me, and the steroids were causing all kinds of problems, lack of sleep. I was getting up at 1 and going to bed again at 5, got locked on at the desk of course then, and my mood was really strange. I was putting on huge amounts of weight. I'd spent 2.5 years losing 30 kilos by taking up running and stopping eating less, and I put back on 15 of those 30 kilos all in the space of about 5 or 6 weeks. I managed to lose about 6 or 7, so I've got about half those back again since then, and that's taken months of effort. So I spent a weekend, the New Year's Eve weekend with my elder son. We went walking, we stayed at a vegan bed and breakfast place in Edale, and we went walking. That was really tough. And my balance was so poor, I needed to use 2 sticks, very, very slow. And then I spent a week with my other son, in London, good restaurant and comedy club and go-karting and so on. And in between I saw close friends and cousins, and so during this process they were working out the diagnosis. What I've missed out here is that on the on the 4th of January I had a biopsy of the lymph nodes. So a guy I've got to know a bit better since then went inside down my windpipe and spent rather long in there on and off. It must have been in 3 times. This had taken him quite a lot longer than he expected. I wasn't fully anaesthetised, I was just partially anaesthetised. So I could see it on the screen. I could almost talk to him when I hadn't got him in my throat, of course. He told me afterwards, when I met him at a lung cancer conference, that nothing came out of any use because the cancer had already killed the lymph nodes in the centre of the lung. So they only brought out dead tissue. However, at the same time, they'd taken the blood, and they'd sent it off for what's called a circulating DNA, a tumour DNA test, which is relatively modern, this testing, and they'd done a genetic analysis of that and worked it out. So I thought I had 2 weeks. They told me I had 2 weeks before they got all the results from the biopsies of various sorts, but I hadn't. They'd sorted it out within a week. So then in between all these travels, I came in to see the oncologist, and at this point it's still in the private system. Various people had said, go to David Gilligan, he's the best person for the job, for helping you. He's one of the team. There are obviously other members of that team at Addenbrooke's. I suspect he's the most senior of that team. So I met him initially in the private system, and from then it's always been within the NHS. So I'm going to leave it till the next vlog to tell you what happened at that meeting, which was really quite shockingly good. Imagine again, my mood's difficult, all the family and friends, I told a few friends at this point, all routing for me.